Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjano Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjano Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjano Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Sri Radha Madhava ki jai, Sri Radha Giridhari ki jai, Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Shamaniti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nivishesha Shanyavari Pasyatyadi Shatarini. So today is the Tirubhav, disappearance day of Sri Shamananda Prabhu. We're going to read a little bit about him and then get right into the Srimad Bhagavatam. This morning's verses are 49, 50, and 51. So, Shamananda Prabhu. So, there's a trio, Shamananda Prabhu, Narottam Das Thakur, and Srinivasacharya. They're all internal associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it says three of them incarnated into this material world after Lord Chaitanya had left to spread his teachings. And Shamananda Prabhu appeared in Orissa, Utkala, to two wonderful, wonderful devotees. I'm just going to go through here. It's interesting here. It says that his birth, a very auspicious moment by the mercy of Lord Jagannath. It was as though Lord Jagannath had personally brought him here in order to propagate his teachings, and therefore he is personally maintaining him. He looks just like a new Cupid. One's eyes and mind are soothed just by looking upon him. You know, sometimes our Prahlad Priya, God bless him, we were talking once about, you see newborn babies, sometimes they look like aliens, you know, until they actually, after like a week or so, they start to look like human beings. You know, they look a little funny sometimes, right? Isn't that true? I'm like, whoa. So he's showing me a picture. I don't know what it's, one of my children, grandchildren or something like that, or his, and he's just saying, it's interesting, they look like aliens, you know, for the first week or two. And then they start looking like human beings. But these great souls, the moment they appear, it says, hey, look just like Cupid. And one couldn't take their eyes off. Auspicious, so many auspicious qualities. And of course, he, at a very young age, became showing all the symptoms of a great soul, the devotional symptoms, and a great scholar. And when he heard, at a very young age, when he heard the glories of Lord Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Vaishnavas of his village, he developed a great attachment to their lotus feet. Now his father, his name was Sri Krishna Mandal, he was a great devotee. And seeing that he was always absorbed in thinking about Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, he told him he should be initiated into divine mantra. And right away his son replied, Sri Hridaya Chaitanya is my guru. And I'm going to go take initiation from him. Now, he was a young boy, not too old. He's going to go off and take initiation. He said, well, you're kind of young to do that. He said, well, you know, so many devotees are going on pilgrimage, I'll just go with them. So his father relented and he went. And when he arrived in that village, his spiritual master-to-be was there. And he said, I had a feeling you'd be coming today. Anyway, so they initiated him. And he was the one who told him that seeing his great intelligence into Krishna consciousness, he ordered him to go to Vrindavan and study under who? Jiva Goswami. So he went there, studied under Jiva Goswami, and let me see here. Set up with the pilgrims. And it says here, when he finally entered Mathura Dham, and this is the process, you first go to Vishram Ghat, take a bath, took darshan of Sri Adi Keshava, and then you roll in the ground in the dust of the birthplace of Lord Krishna. So that's supposed to be the appropriate way to go to Vrindavan, is first go to Mathura, take your bath, roll in the dust at the birthplace, Krishna's Janmastan. Then he went to Vrindavan, asked the devotees where Jiva Goswami was, and informed him that his spiritual master told him to come and study under him. And Jiva Goswami is so very, very happy. And his name at that time was Dukhi Krishnadas. Dukhi Krishnadas. And he very, very carefully began to serve Jiva Goswami and study the literatures of all the Goswamis. And that's when Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das Thakur met him, and they all were students together. And Krishnadas, Dukhi Krishnadas, asked Jiva Goswami, can you give me some special service? Sometimes a disciple has the good fortune of asking the spiritual master, can you please give me personal instruction? What would you like me to do? Such a fortunate soul. So he instructed him to start sweeping the grove of Seva Kunj. Who here has been to Seva Kunj there in Vrindavan? Seva Kunj is right near the Radha Damodar temple. So every day he'd be sweeping, kind of sweeping it up like that, sweeping the dust. And he carried out that service with great pleasure. And he says, as he was sweeping, tears flowed from his eyes, and sometimes he would loudly chant the names of Sri Sri Radha Govinda, and sometimes he would just stand there and become inert. And sometimes he would take that broom full of dust and put it on his head, getting the dust of all the associates of the Lord, seen and unseen. It says, even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva pray to receive a little of this dust of Vrindavan on their heads. So there's a pastime here, which you may be familiar with it. As he's sweeping away one day, all of a sudden he comes across this bangle, very beautiful bangle that was kind of left in the dust, and he picked it up. So that's very pretty. He said, let me just wrap it in my cloth here, and whoever lost it will come back for it, and I'll give it to them. They know me as the sweeper of the area, and so on. So simultaneously, the next morning, on the different stratum of existence, Radharani is talking to Lalita and Vishaka and said, you know something, I dropped that bangle when we were dancing there last night in Seva Kunj on the spiritual platform. He said, we got to go back and get it. And then she sent them to go and find it. And let me see here. Vishaka came to Dukhi Krishnadas, saw him sweeping, and said, you know, by the way, did you happen to find a bangle lying around here somewhere? And he looked at them, and they were it's described somewhere that he could barely even focus. It's so effulgent and beautiful. She kind of had to tone things down so he could even see her. And she said, yeah, she said, I found something. Is it yours? And she said, no, it's not mine. It belongs to a friend of mine. And what happened? So she was dancing here, and it's a gift for her. She's getting married, and she lost it, and she wanted me to come and see if you could, if someone found it, and to bring it back to her. He says, I have it, but I want her to come herself and get it. That's proper. You know, I want to make sure I give it to the right person. She said, no, you can give it to me. She said, no, I want to give it to her myself. So maybe it's inspired in the heart. And so it's described here, after some conversations back and forth, he could start sensing that something very, very special has just happened. And Vishaka told Radharani that he's not going to give it to me. You got to come and get it yourself. So it's described here that Radharani came back with Vishaka and Lalita. And he was stunned, and she requested him to take a bath in Radhakund, and he went into Radhakund and came out in the body of a gopi. And there's a whole exchange, and he returned the bangle. This is all happening on the transcendental platform. And she was very, very, very thankful that he had saved it and so on. And then she took that bangle, the edge of the bangle on his forehead, and made an imprint of tilak, a special marking just like tilak. And said, your name now is Shyamananda, thank you very much, and disappeared. And he kind of woke out of his trance, and he was back in his body of this material world, Dukhi Krishnadas, now Shyamananda, and he has this tilak marking on his forehead that won't go away. It's from the bracelet, the outline of the bracelet. So, guess who's in ecstasy? And he goes back and he tells Jiva Goswami what had happened, and Jiva Goswami said, you're a very, very fortunate soul, but don't tell anyone about this. Don't tell anyone. But the residents of Vrindavan started seeing, and everyone's calling him Shyamananda now for some reason. He's got this amazing tilak on his forehead. And then word got all the way back to his spiritual master. And his spiritual master is described in detail in another book, thought that Jiva Goswami or someone had reinitiated him, you know, after he had entrusted. So he went all the way to Vrindavan. It's not like he took a train or bus. Actually, it took him a few months. He finally got all upset, and he walked for a few months to get to Vrindavan to find out what's going on. And he first approached his disciple and said, what are you doing? You've changed your name and this and that, and you're not supposed to do this. And then Jiva Goswami stepped in, and they explained, actually what happened was that Radharani appeared in a dream after he had severely chastised his disciple for giving up his shelter and changing his name and this and that. And he just stood there folding his hands because he knew exactly what had happened. But that night Radharani appeared to his spiritual master and told him exactly what had happened. And he just became full of ecstasy and went to his disciple and started crying and embracing him, telling him how fortunate he was. So it's described here that one thing is, what I wanted to bring up, the main thing is devotees on this platform, you see how exalted they are, and they actually can exist, move into in and out of the spiritual dimension But you could say their feet are still on the ground because after this incident happened, he began preaching. Actually, what happened was that was the cart. You know, the story of the cart of all the Goswami's books. They were given to Srinivasacharya, Narottam Das Thakur, and Shyamananda to bring all the way back to Bengal, the writings of the Goswamis, and that cart was stolen by a king who was actually a thief, but he actually became a great devotee. And while they were trying to retrieve that, Srinivasacharya stayed there to work on getting that cart back. Narottam Das Thakur went to Bengal, and Shyamananda went to Orissa, started to preach. His spiritual master said, I want you to preach. He said, I'd like to stay with you. He said, but I want you to preach. Sometimes the disciple wants to stay with the spiritual master, and the spiritual master says, no, I really want you to preach. Preach the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because at that time, they were hearing the news that very, very few associates, contemporaries of Lord Chaitanya were left on this planet. They were just disappearing. You know, just like if you follow ISKCON news, about every week or two, another disciple of Prabhupada goes away. Who was the one just left this week? It's Maharaj, Tirshanta Maharaj, like that. So they're going. So there are very few left. He said, we need to preach. And there's a whole description here of all these different villages and preaching engagements, and he really did an amazing job of just turning the whole state of, at that time it wasn't called Orissa, it was called Utkala, into devotees. Big preaching was going on, very, very big preaching. He also attended the first festival at Keturi, the Gaur Punim festival. He was there for that. And but that was a point I wanted to make, that he could have just stayed in Vrindavan and just fully absorbed on the transcendental platform, not aspiring, but but he went and preached. Great souls. And let me just see if there's any concluding thing here. Auspicious day. But that's how he spent his life. Preaching, describing all these different places and so on. And Kirtan, Festival of Keturi. So many devotees. And his Pushpa Samadhi, and the place where he found Srimati Radharani's ankle bracelet, is just across the street from Sri Sri Radha Shyama Sundar's temple in Vrindavan. Sri Sri Radha Shyama Sundar are his worshipful deities. That's Shyamananda Prabhu. So we're going to all pray to him to get some mercy today, to be enthusiastic in our preaching, and Krishna consciousness. Okay, so we'll go right into the Srimad Bhagavatam. I just want to bring this in. Is everyone still awake? How are we doing? Can we open that door a little bit? So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is, I'll read text 49 and 50. 51 is on the board. Pradaya mrityave putran mochaye kripanam imam suttame yadi jayeran mitjurvana mriyate chet viprayayo vakyam no syad gatir dhatu durattatya upastito nivartita nivrita punar apatet. Translation. This is Vasudev is speaking. Vasudev continued, by delivering all my sons to Kamsa, who is death personified, I shall save the life of Devaki. Perhaps Kamsa will die before my sons take birth, or since he is already destined to die at the hands of my son, one of my sons may kill him. For the time being, let me promise to hand over my sons to that Kamsa, so that Kamsa will give up his immediate threat, and in due course of time Kamsa dies, and if in due course of time Kamsa dies, I shall have nothing to fear. Purport. Vasudeva wanted to save the life of Devaki by promising to deliver his sons to Kamsa. In the future, he thought, Kamsa may die or I may not beget any sons. Even if a son is born and I deliver him to Kamsa, Kamsa may die at his hands. For by providence, anything could happen. It is very difficult to understand how things are managed by providence. Thus, Vasudeva decided that he would promise to deliver his sons to the hands of Kamsa in order to save Devaki from the imminent danger of death. Today's verse. Agnir yata daru viyoga yogayor adrishtato anyan na nimitam asti evam hi jantor api durvibhavyaha sharira samyoga viyoga hetuhu. Is that just the regular, or is that? Yeah. Agniryata daru viyoga yogayor Nadrashtonanya nimitam asti evam hi jantorapi durvibhavya sharira samyoga viyoga hetu Agniryata daru viyoga yogayor Adrashtonanna nimitam asti evam hi jantorapi durvibhavya sharira samyoga viyoga hetu Agniryata daru viyoga yogayor Adrashtatonyana nimitam asti evam hi jantorapi durvibhavya sharira samyoga viyoga hetu. Anyone online? Yoga yoga yor Adrashtonyonya nimitam asti evam hi jantorapi durvibhavya sharira samyoga viyoga hetu. Agni, of a fire in the forest. Yata, as. Daru, of wood. Viyoga yoga yo, of both the escaping and the capturing. Adrishtataha. Then unseen providence. Anyat. Some other reason or accident. Na. Not. Nimitam. A cause. Asti. There is. Evam. In this way. He. Certainly. Jantoho. Of the living being. Api. Indeed. Durvibhavyaha. Cannot be found out. Sharira. Of the body. Samyoga. Of the accepting. Viyoga. Or of the giving up. Hetuhu. The cause. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. When a fire, for some unseen reason, leaps over one piece of wood and sets fire to the next, the reason is destiny. Similarly, when a living being accepts one kind of body and leaves aside another, there is no other reason than unseen destiny. Purport. When there's a fire in a village, the fire sometimes jumps over one house and burns another. Similarly, when there is a forest fire, the fire sometimes jumps over one tree and catches another. Why this happens, no one can say. One may set forth some imaginary reason why the nearest tree or house did not catch fire, whereas a tree or house in a distant place did. But actually the reason is destiny. This reason also applies to the transmigration of the soul, by which a prime minister in one life may become a dog in the next. The work of unseen destiny cannot be ascertained by practical experimental knowledge, and therefore one must be satisfied by reasoning that everything is done by supreme providence. Om Agyantimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksulunminitam Dena Taismai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabadanikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhavacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So did I just offer my respectful obeisance to devotees or little trees? Did I say it right? Okay. Because if you say it wrong, you're offering obeisances to little sinful trees, right? Cheating trees, okay. Not even an honest tree, it's a cheating tree. So by the grace of the devotees, what happened to Sankarshan? Back home, back to Godhead. I saw him sitting next to you just a minute or two ago. Okay, it's unmanifest. So by your ardent prayers, blessings, we'll try to say a few things. What a difficult situation. What a difficult situation. I mean, Krishna just seems to enjoy putting his devotees in difficult situations, doesn't he? Can you imagine that? You know, just like, and it's completely unexpected. I mean, not that Kamsa was like everyone's best friend or known to be a pious person or religious person or a Rajarshi. No. But he was in a very respectable position. Even someone's a cheating rascal nonsense, if they're in a very high position, usually they watch what they're doing because they don't want to be caught, you know, and embarrassed and so on. Just like Krishna says to Arjuna in the Gita, for one who's been honored, dishonor is worse than death. So people, you know, watch what they're doing. And even though they're doing so many nefarious things, they try to do it in private so they don't get caught under the table and so on and so on. And they many times do get caught, and it's quite embarrassing for them. So here's a wedding day. You know, I've, as you know, have been to many, many wedding days. Someone asked me a year or two ago, I said it's at least over 1,000 weddings. So I'm still alive to tell the tale. So wedding day is quite, you know, and they always have the scene, you know, I was just doing it a few days ago in Chicago. The bride and groom, they got married and they were getting into this. I was telling devotees this morning, this, what is that? I think it's called robin blue egg, that very light, like this. Actually, it was a color like the temple room, that kind of blue. Rolls Royce, sports car. So they're getting into that, to drive off. And, sometimes they have someone drive them, like a brother and so on. In fact, they did actually have someone, a best man or something, was driving. So and everyone's saying goodbye and this and that. And so you drive off in the fancy car or however. And so that's what's happening. And it's Kamsa, her own brother. Her own brother hears something in the sky and turns around right on the spot to kill her. You gotta think fast. This has come unexpected, and what a horrible thing that he's pulled his sword. It's not like he said, "I think I'm going to kill her." No, he pulled his sword like right on the spot. And Vasudeva has to, what kind of family did I marry into? Hare Krishna. And he's got to save his wife. So it's described here, his thought process. And of course, he preached to him very nicely. And then, also appealing to his nature of not wanting to be, of being in a very exalted position and not having to go to hell and not be embarrassed by the situation, killing your own sister, a woman and your sister. And then he makes this promise, at least let me deal with the situation now, make a promise, at least save her life, because no one knows what's going to happen in the future. Who knows? There may be no children, there may be children, even if there is a child. The prophecy is that it will kill Kamsa, but I don't know what's going to happen, but let me just save her. So, very, very different emotion. You imagine the emotions of that. It'd be an amazing play to put on. Just this one scene on the chariot. Who would be Vasudeva in our temple? No, I don't think. It's got to be someone young getting married. She didn't marry some old man. It's going to be two young devotees. Maybe we'll have. I don't know. We'll think about it. But got to be a good actor and actress because such. And Kamsa. Mukunda could be Vasudeva. And maybe you could be a nasty Kamsa, right? Can you get nasty? Yeah. Right. Actors say it's easy to be a nasty person than a good person. So you got to be really nasty like that. So Raymond's great. But the emotion is so high. And Krishna's doing this for a reason, to bring out all these emotions. So anyways, he's trying to save his wife. And in this verse in purport is bringing out, when situations like this happen, what are we supposed to think? What are we supposed to think? What's Krishna doing here? Why has Krishna put me into this particular situation? And it can be very challenging for a person's faith when they're put in a difficult situation. Why me? Why me? Because I'm just a nice devotee. Why would Krishna do this to me? I can understand chastising a person who's not a devotee, to bring them around, but I'm just a nice devotee, even a pure devotee, and Krishna's doing this to me. So, but it's described here about, destiny and why things happen and so on. We don't have a lot of time, but I think the most the part of the Bhagavatam that gets right to the point of this more than any other point is Bhishmadev speaking to Maharaj Yudhisthira. Because here we have Vasudeva dealing with one person being threatened with death. And Yudhisthira had just come from the battlefield where millions of people were killed on his behalf. And you can imagine, just like sometimes, because we have the media now, you sometimes see scenes of the aftermath, at least, of bombings and things like that. In fact, I heard, over the last year or so, what really switched people's understanding of war was TV in the Vietnam War. Because you hear, oh yeah, there's a war on the other side of the world, and there's bombing and this and that, and weeks later there may be something in the newspaper. But when they actually reporters were over there filming what was going on, and the American people were seeing it, that's when everything really changed, and the horror of war and ghastliness of the whole situation. So you can imagine 18 days on the battlefield and millions of people are being killed. And all for him to be the king of the king. So how, even if someone who's not a pure devotee, you'd imagine they're completely overwhelmed that such a thing had happened. Such a scene. We can't even imagine what we think. Oh yeah, it was a battle, and they're not like they cleaned it up in 24 hours. They just swept it up or something. How do you deal with millions of dead bodies and animals and the blood everywhere and this and that and family? It's unbelievable what was going on there every single day. Then they got to clean it up and the next day. And you know how many fires must have been burning, funeral pyres. I'm sure the war is going on, and somewhere else you got all this smoke and funeral pyres going because you have to burn the body, try to burn the body within 24 hours. That's what you do in Vedic culture. So what a ghastly scene. And then, of course, the war is there. Then after the aftermath of the war, all the suffering, right? All the family members are suffering that their husbands and sons and brothers and fathers and grandfathers were killed. So it's a ghastly scene, overwhelming. So and he's wondering why is this all happening? So right off the bat, when Bhishma Dev's lying there on the bed of arrows, and Yudhisthira and his brothers had come, and many people had come to see his passing, just seeing Yudhisthira, he started speaking about the situation. So there's a few verses here, beginning, it's chapter 9, verse 12, the first canto. Bhishma Dev said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified." In other words, just for being a devotee. Did you know that when you signed up in ISKCON? Just for being a devotee, you're going to suffer. It happens. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion. So he makes this point in the purport here that, because Yudhisthira is wondering why, what path should we follow? And Bhishma Dev is saying, of course he's referring to the battle of Kurukshetra, but all those things before the battle, being exiled for so many years and so many attempts on their lives, how could this happen? And Bhishma Dev was encouraging Maharaj Yudhisthira that as long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles, one has no cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. Bhishma Dev, as one of the authorities in the line, wanted to impress this point upon the Pandavas. So in other words, we may not be able to make sense of it all, but as long as those things are there, that we're working as best we can to fulfill the wishes of the Lord. We're guided. We're following the directions of bona fide Brahmins and Vaishnavas and religious principles, that whatever cause of despondency is there in our lives and in others, we're okay. We're okay. So next he says, next verse, and he refers now to Kunti. He says, as far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. So now he's referring to the suffering of another devotee, Kunti. 14, in my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, as referred to in today's verse. It is irreversible, otherwise how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhisthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club, and the great bowman Arjun with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. So he's just saying how powerful time and destiny must be, because in a situation like this, everyone is thinking, if I have a very good material situation, whatever difficulty comes, I'll take care of it. Especially today, they think money. With money, you can take care of everything, right? You can take care of it. You can buy nice facilities for your life. You can have good medical insurance, this and that. You can even, just like the late J. Paul Getty, he said There's two kinds of people in this world. That's all. There's only two kinds of people. Now, did he quote Bhagavad Gita and say demons and devotees? What did he say? What did he say? What are the two kinds of people he said there are in this world? Do you know?
People you pay to be around with you, and people you pay to
stay away from you. So if you have enough money, you can pay people to be with you. You can pay people to stay away from you. So money solves everything. Material opulence, or I'm very, very intelligent. I can figure it all out. I can figure it all out. I can figure it all out. So here, Bhishma Dev is saying that, wait a second, that's not true. Because he's describing here that first you have Yudhisthira, who is the son of Dharmaraj, religion personified. And then you have Bhima, who's so powerful with his mighty bow, his mighty club, and you have Arjun, powerful archer. These are the most powerful fighters of the day. And even Krishna himself was their friend, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and still all these things happened. How do you explain that? How do you explain it? Destiny. That's it. Next, 16. O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord, Sri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. 17. O best among the descendants of Bharat, Yudhisthira, I maintain therefore that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. So, this Sri Krishna is and he's actually speaking here as Krishna right here, is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He's the first Narayan, the supreme enjoyer, but he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni just like one of us, and he's bewildering us with his self-created energy. So, this is a very right to the point answer to this question, because Maharaj Yudhisthira could not be consoled. In fact, it's described that before they went to see Yudhisthira, even Krishna couldn't console him, his grief. Even Krishna was trying to preach to him, just like we're having some difficulties, and Balaram pulls you aside, and tries to preach to you, kind of get you back in shape, right? Because our mind is like, we're despondent for some reason. So here are some words of wisdom and encouragement and affection, get us back in line. So imagine having Krishna preach to you personally. Can you imagine that? Krishna preaching to you about falling asleep in class and yawning. Come on, Prabhu. So Krishna's personally preaching to you, and still you don't listen. It still doesn't help. Not you don't listen, it just doesn't help. So they went to Bhishma Dev. And this is another arrangement of Krishna to glorify Bhishma Dev, because his preaching actually worked. So he's describing here. And it's time to end, but the thing I always remember from this few verses is the three things he said. As long as, saying, what's going on? What's going on? But as long as you are in line, with the directions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Brahmins, the Vaishnavas, and the principles of religion, you're okay. And and you have to tolerate it and go ahead, but don't. What else can you do? So he's just telling Yudhisthira, what can you do? Sometimes this is just the arrangement of karma or providence or destiny. And Prabhupada said in the purport, philosophers exhaustively try to figure this all out, but they can never figure it out. Just like, can you figure out why the fire jumps from this house to that house? Can you figure it out? Just like you see these pictures, like, was it a year or so ago, the Palisades up there in LA, all these mansions? Because I had some family up there I knew. I did their wedding and I went up there and did a puja for their house. They bought a real nice house there in the Palisades, kind of a mini mansion and so on like that, and it all burned down. But you see pictures and be here, and then all of a sudden one house is just there. And the houses behind it, in front of it, on this are gone. It just kind of jumped over and burned everything else. Now, why is that? Who can say? You cannot say. Some or other, it's Krishna's arrangement. But as long as I am properly situated, I'm okay. And just go through. And don't lose heart, and so on. And don't think we can make sense of it. It's just Krishna somehow or other has a plan, and try to be very, very perceptive of that plan, and ask others also, maybe they can give some realization or help trying to understand the plan of the Lord. Okay, so we can end here with these few points. Are there any questions or comments? It's just pretty straightforward class.
Yeah, I remember in...
Do you need a microphone? They got a few floating around here. Teacher will have one for you. I mean, has anyone here in this room ever doubted they're going through a difficult situation? They wondered, why is Krishna doing this to me? Is anyone here? No one's ever had that happen? If you haven't had it happen yet, you will. I guarantee it. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a small thing about you're saying the fires up there in Maui some years ago. They had those terrible fires which like burn their all, at least in one part of the island, like their tourist attractions. They all burned down, the restaurants and everything. So it was really difficult for people. But it was interesting that if you look at, you could search and look at the pictures. Like there's a picture and it's like everything's just burnt, but there's like one house that didn't burn down. Right. Literally like one house. It was interesting.
Another example given is that story about a snake, in India, crawling onto the bed, crawling over the mother and father and biting the baby. They put the baby in the middle so it wouldn't fall out of the bed or be protected, but the cobra would climb up, bite the baby, and why? I mean, we could spend the rest of our life trying to just, why? Who knows? It's destiny. Who can say? There's some greater plan, and we should just try to be as properly situated as we possibly can. That's the lesson there. Materially, there's no explanation. There's just no explanation. It's just destiny, Krishna's plan, like that, moving us around. Krishna has a plan. We have a plan. So we can end here. All glories. The plan is breakfast is next, right? That's the plan. Okay. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Sri Shamananda Prabhu.